there's a picture there, and I'm not sure. I know you drew a triangle. I'm not sure if it's a triangle or a spiral. I've always done it as a spiral. Okay, I entered into...
That's what I mean. It's just, I'm a terrible artist.
It's like a funnel.
When I got saved, well, I'm not doing the top, I keep the top 10s, but as I'm going through my journey, the top 10, I'm all right with that. I'm fine. But,
I don't see myself so much as like the rebellious teenager that God just wants to choke because I'm just trying. I see myself more as like Steve Urkel that just can't get out of his own way, and like I'm always looking around like, did I do that? And he's saying, yeah, you did again.
Of course, I'm bragging about you a little bit, so don't get prideful.
No, I won't. I'll try not to. We went and watched LeBron play there when he was with the Cavaliers.
Really?
And I took the kids because they were, LeBron fans. I mean, he was probably one of the best, if not. I'd make an argument he could be probably the best, but I didn't get into that. But anyway, you go up there and I had the kids sitting. They weren't that far from courtside. It was day after Thanksgiving, so it was pretty cool. Yeah, well, very crowded.
Me and Gabe were just having the LeBron versus Jordan debate the other day. He was that. So he likes to ask me that one.
So what's his argument?
He doesn't.
I'm trying to base it on. I think younger people think it's LeBron because that's all they saw.
I think Gabe says Jordan was, but I think Gabe says Jordan was because I say Jordan was. And honestly, I was even telling Gabe the other day, I said, honestly, it really is the generational thing because if we're being totally fair, we need to be giving some love to like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell. I mean, these guys had some pretty impressive stats too.
They score 100 points a game.
It's just a different era. You can't really judge that because everybody plays off that person before them.
They do, and you can't.
They got those moves plus they had some more.
I just can't give it to Michael because of where he went to school.
No, you might have a little bit of a bias in your, but to be fair, I might have a little bit of bias in mine.
I have a lot of bias towards. No, he went to Carolina. I can't give it to him.
Carolina and a State fan are not allowed to weigh in on the GOAT debate.
I'll give Larry Bird the nod before I give Michael Jordan the nod.
Let me make sure I'm recording here. All right, we are on.
You got some of that.
I'll edit that out.
Man, I didn't know you were recording.
Glad you were walking with the Lord, huh?
Yeah. I didn't say anything. I kept my mouth quiet.
Yeah.
Always got to be careful. You never know when the red button's on. But I try to make sure I get rid of everything that, I told somebody at Bible study the other day, I said, y'all have no idea how many stupid things I've said on this thing that I got rid of.
Yes. All of us.
Yeah.
All of us.
But welcome back to the other 167, Garrett, Kenny, and Ben, the Benny and Kenny, or whatever we're going to call it. I like that Benny and Kenny.
I'll tell you what, Kenny, for your thoughts. The hottest thing since Cabbage Patch Kids, man.
Well, I'm here by
way back.
Yeah, I'm here by popular demand this week.
Well, yeah. Well, I saw Renee Thursday morning. We just put it out, and I said I want you to go back and make sure Kenny knows that it's. If I don't invite him every week, it's because it's a standing invitation.
Yeah, that's
I don't feel like I should have to invite you. You should be here every week. I thought it was a great addition last week.
Well, I appreciate that.
But we did. I went back and listened. I laughed, so it is. I think it's good, and I appreciate you doing all that editing because I know that can be a job.
Yeah, it's easier without me talking as much. It gets a lot easier. I'm telling you, man. I am the problem. Funniest thing about Sunday, though, I got this in my notes. Always, it's about the relationship, not the rituals and the religion.
Ritual and religion, yeah.
Relationship over rituals, and then what we do at the end, a ritual.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's an ordinance. Let's call it what it is. It's an ordinance.
I was cracking up at it because Gabe and I had Gabe and Christian with me this week.
Right.
Reese was at a sleepover for birthday, and I'm trying to explain to Gabe this is his first time being there for communion. I said, okay. I said, well,
that's always interesting.
You got to pass the plate, and he's like, well, why can't I have one? I'm like, I'll explain it later. I don't want to. So now I've got to explain to Gabe and Christian, they're wanting a cracker. And when y'all came out with the grape juice, I thought Christian was going to lose it because he loves grape juice now.
I won't mind. Can I get mine? I tell you what, and it's funny because depending on where your church is and what church does. Some churches use actual loaf bread for the, and then we've got these crackers that, man, they're pretty stiff, don't you think?
I don't know, where do you get them?
I think we just take cardboard and cut them up.
Yeah. I like that with saltine.
Add yeast, well, we add some flavor to it, bread flavor.
See, I always try. I'll let mine dissolve in my mouth for just a little bit because I want to soften it up so that I'm not participating in that group crunch.
Yeah, that group crunch. Yeah, that's
it's
true because that thing is crunchy. And interesting. And I don't know if I talked about this on this show before, but one of the questions I had to answer in seminary, a theology professor, he'll throw some stuff at you every now and then. And one of the questions, the last exam was, okay, so you make a trip out to the rest home and you're seeing them, and they said they want communion, and all they have is Lance crackers and RC Cola. Can you do it? And I said, I ain't never thought about that. So
well, the Lance crackers, do those qualify? I get the RC Cola part, but
the orange ones?
Toasties. It is Toasties.
Yeah. Okay.
The round peanut butter ones.
Well, what's the answer to that?
I mean, me personally, I said, my thing was, I think we can remember the death without having to have a Lance cracker or RC Cola.
Yeah.
But now, here's the thing: is I do have a portable kit that if somebody requests, I'll go to the house and we'll do it with the actual bread and grape juice or whatever. But that was mine. Is okay. We can remember without having to, hold in a hand a nabs.
Well, the interesting thing was after I made it was sort of a joking note that I put in there that, we did the ritual after talking about, it was, relationship over rituals. But to be fair, I mean, we don't do the ritual if you don't have the relationship, right? Like that is the prerequisite for doing the ritual, because I think for me, I don't know how many times I've done communion, but it's always a little bit like, I feel like when I eat the cracker or I drink the juice that I'm supposed to have like some special feeling or something that comes over me. It usually doesn't. It's just a cracker and
mine is usually
sip, right?
Gracious, this cracker. Where in the world?
Yeah.
How old is this thing?
Yeah.
I think it's one of, and I think the whole process, or what makes the Lord's Supper so important, and maybe that kind of goes to our walk with the Lord. We're always looking for a feeling, and I think sometimes it goes back to the truth of what's taking place here. Mm-hmm. I'm remembering what the sacrifice that was made. So there's a recollection, remembering what he did. There's the fellowship of, hey, look at this. We are a body of Christ. So there's the communion and community. There's the anticipation. We do it looking forward to when he returns. There's the appreciation. There's a thankfulness there. There's the introspection. There's so many things that go on at the Lord's Supper that it's not necessarily a feeling as much as it is just taking in exactly what you're holding in your hand. It's a piece of bread, that's all. But what it represents is that's Christ's body that was broken for you. And I think it's just one of thinking about the sacrifice, thinking about this new covenant that we have. It was only because of Christ, the mediator, if you will.
Yeah, I like that.
And when you think about it, when you think about it, the actual. So I didn't plan on really talking about this, but actually, so the eclipse we had yesterday, I felt like that was a very underwhelming experience, right? Woo. So I would say the opposite in communion, though. The eating of the cracker or the bread and the drinking of the wine or the juice or whatever itself is not necessarily a special feeling or moment, but the build-up leading up to it, getting your heart right and really getting that. Now, that is a special time and a special process.
And I think that's one of the things I try to, and I think it was in the bulletin, hey, communion next week. Mm-hmm. Usually I'll write an article in the newsletter just saying, hey, take this time this week and mentally prepare for it. And you're right. You mentioned, because I was going to mention this Sunday, but just the Lord didn't take me down that path. But I sat there and I thought about, well, I've been taking this for 44 years now. Mm-hmm. And if you do 4 times a year, average, and let's say I missed a few, this is about the 150th time I've done this.
Right.
And, how do you make it so that it's not just the 150th time? Check. Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back to what do you make important in it? It's not necessarily the eating and the drinking as much as it is, it's a mental exercise.
Yeah. I was kind of chuckling as we were getting ready to actually, we're passing out the crackers, or no, it was the juice because I was holding the juice. And the Christians bouncing all over the place, right? And I'm sitting there like
most exciting time in church.
I know. So I know the people behind me are thinking I'm yelling, sit down, sit down. But it was not about the ritual at all. And not wanting to interrupt the ritual. I didn't want it to bump into me spill the juice. Okay, that's because. But all of that's just to say you can kind of chuckle about it when you do realize this doesn't mean anything if you don't have that relationship the rest of the week. The other 167.
You can have juice, and you just had juice.
That's right.
But I will say this: some of the funniest times in church have always been around the Lord's Supper.
Oh, yeah.
It is without a doubt. Whether it's I've had deacons that didn't fix enough, they didn't think I ain't gonna be that many people here.
Yeah.
And it turned out the church was full, and they're back there panicking. We gotta go make more, preach longer. Those kind of that makes me laugh. You might not have seen it this past Sunday, but I think several people did because they commented on it. Well, the pianist is up on stage playing as hard as she can, and I kind of gave this number to one of the deacons of.
Don't forget her.
Take it up there. And they were like, huh? There's something wrong with his neck. And then finally I stepped and I said, can you go and give one to them? And then it was so funny because rather than just taking it, look, I'm okay if you touch my bread. If you take the bread and just put it on the piano and walk back. He sat there and, she's starting to play the piano and she started doing it with one hand. If you go back, it's funny to me. I was like, good gracious. And so it was one of those that it's just always been comical. And then even this past Sunday when I went to serve the deacons the juice, there was one cup. I don't know if they wedged it in there or if they melted it and it stuck to it. But, man, he could not pull that thing out. And I was sitting there like, that is the best thing ever. So, yeah, and as a pastor, look, man, it is one of, I know it's a special time, but those things, I just love them because they make me laugh. When I baptize people, oftentimes I'll dip my hand in the water and try to dangle it over and try to get the people on the back row wet. I mean, I just enjoy that. I know it's probably,
What about, do you remember, this was when we were in the fellowship hall.
Oh, yeah, that was one of the best ones ever, too.
And we're trying to make the
Here recently,
bread,
like last fall?
It was last year.
Yeah, okay.
We're trying to make the bread so they look, there's 4 trays on each side, and so they'd be even. Well, the last one didn't have anything in it.
That's right. That's right. It was empty. I remember looking at that thing saying, what in the world?
There's 8 of us, and we all had to have one, but one of them didn't have anything in it.
Yes.
Did you forget?
They forgot to put them on that tray, and I don't know if they just thought it was, but I'd forgotten that. That's one of the best ones ever.
So every time they pass me the tray, especially, I'm more worried with the juice for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But I always think I'm going to spill it. Like, be careful not to spill. Have you ever had somebody drop it and spill it?
I've had people spill it, but not like just drop the whole plate. I haven't yet. But I have had somebody had the cup and they got, correcting kids or the kids spit. It is what it is, man. It is, But no, it's more usually the passing out or the giving of that. It's always a lot of fun. Yeah. And baptism's another one. You bring in water into it, and so I've gotten wet from, basically my whole suit. Even though I've got waders on, it's always something good.
I'm always thinking about when you're up there, you got your microphone on in there, and I'm always thinking is that safe?
In the water? No, I don't. They got a microphone
hanging from the ceiling. Okay. Because I've always wondered where the sound was coming.
I told them I ain't doing that. And then I double check behind these guys because they've got it's a heater. It's heated water, so it isn't freezing. Yeah. And I always tell them, if y'all turn this heater off now, I ain't stepping in there and getting electrocuted. And I don't think you could, but I ain't taking no chances.
Yeah. We cut it off right before service, not when we get here at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But it's not. I've been here at 10 o'clock at night, the day, like Saturday night, checking it, and it was cold. It just something must just happen over a few hours.
Like all of a sudden
it's like, man, that's pretty hot.
Yeah. The best one though is I was baptizing my son. It was today he was going to be baptized, and there was about 4 others that were going to be baptized with him. And I get here early because I like to just go around, turn the lights on, make sure everything's kind of working semi or whatever, and and then I like to just sit in the sanctuary with the lights off before anybody gets there. And I walked in and I looked up and the door was closed, and I said, that's odd because if there's water behind there, I gotta open it up before we baptize. That's gonna be kind of new. And went up there. There wasn't a drop of water in the tub, and I thought to myself, we got people coming in from Wilmington, everywhere else to see this baptism, and we got to do this thing.
Yeah.
And so we started hauling water as fast as we could.
Why was there not water in it? What had happened?
They
Just forgot to fill it up.
I thought it was next weekend.
Yeah.
And I told everybody getting baptized, I said, think warm thoughts because it is cold. I mean, we didn't have time to heat it up.
Yeah.
Although I was bringing hot water from the kitchen in buckets, 5-gallon buckets, running up the stairs, dumping it in 5 gallons at a time. But that's a big bathtub. How many gallons you think that thing holds? 1,000?
I don't know. Yeah, 1,000.
Maybe.
I was thinking
200. I don't know.
It
200 aquarium
it takes about 2 hours and 15 minutes to fill it up now.
Yeah.
with just a regular spigot.
Yeah.
Depending on how cold it was, I'd be thinking real hard about can we try a different method? Does the sprinkling
Can we
method
wait
work?
till next
Yeah.
week? I don't care if anybody's coming or not. I ain't worried about him. But the poor fella's lips, boy, they were just as blue, and he was shivering. I was like, oh man, I hate that. I'm not gonna hold you under much. I'm gonna get you in and out. And but yeah, it's always. But those are the little things that I don't know. You just have to you remember them, and you think they're they'll always be things you remember.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you stop and think about it. Some of the best Christmases you remember are the ones that were the most unscripted /
Yeah.
nothing went right. The turkey was burnt or whatever. I mean, those are the ones that you remember.
Well,
and you laugh about.
Yeah, well, it's about that realness too, right? I mean, it's real. It's not perfect. It's real.
It's real. It's real. I'm gonna throw something out.
Yeah.
I love before you got here, Kenny and I were talking about it. I think Kenny, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. One of the things you were talking about was a holy motivation. And I think that is one of those things that we were talking about avoiding burnout. How do you keep from burning out? And whether it's serving the Lord or whether it's even in your job, I think it's in this other 167. How do you keep that? I don't want to say passion, but I think it might be a passion. How do you keep that drive? What is it that not just for the Lord, but I think it's for everything. And we were just kicking around some ideas, and I've got some things, but I thought I'd let you start, man.
Oh, what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You talking to me?
I mean, I thought you were going to explain it. That's why.
I remember
that's
that
why
conversation.
I was just, I went to and I'll say this first. I went to a mission class that didn't set up. Well, it was here at the church, but allowed me to go, and it was the most awesome class I've ever had in my life. And one of the things is, you see a lot of passion in everything. And I know in my life that, a lot of times I'm passionate about something, but 5 years down the road, I'm not so, certain about it. Or just to see in bringing the gospel to people in Christ, we just have to, and like Ben said, or your job and anything, you have to have biblical motivation. Passion wears out, but biblical motivation does not wear out.
And I think bear with me on this. I might be stretching just a little bit far for this analogy, but I think we got Ben here. You can do all kinds of stuff with analogies. So when I was playing a lot of golf, when I would have tournaments and stuff, like a big tournament would come up, it's so funny to me looking back at it. First hole, I remember one in particular. I stand on the first tee, U.S. Junior Amateur Qualifier, and I felt like I was holding a rattlesnake. I mean, my hands are shaking, and as I pulled the club back, as I made that transition to like that point of no return, I'm thinking, I'm going to miss this ball. There's no way I'm going to make contact. And I've hit the most beautiful little 2-yard draw right down the middle, and then repeat that for the second shot, and I hit it to 2 feet. And then I'm standing over a 2-foot putt, and I'm shaking so much I feel like I'm putting it into a thimble. But I make the putt, dead center. And that was not the only time that ever happened. Like, that kind of thing happened to me a lot in terms of those first hole jitters.
Oh, yeah.
I was shaking, but I usually played pretty good on the first holes.
Right.
Second, third, fourth hole, I'd get settled down, my nerves would calm down a little bit, and I'd go to pieces. So it's weird that when you think it's the opposite, but as I would settle in, I would play worse. But there is something about, like in this sort of real world analogy, your body, your senses are heightened, and that nervousness is kind of a good thing. But I think that, and there's even things in books you'll hear athletes talk about being nervous. Some athletes are better when they're nervous and under pressure.
That pressure.
But I think it's the same way in your job and your walk with the Lord and anything, that if you're, not to say that your walk's supposed to be uncomfortable, but you shouldn't get comfortable. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things we do have to fight against, is getting into that little routine of just going through the motions, or we're doing it because it's routine. The first time you have a big thing going on with a job, or your first sermon, or your first whatever, you're going to take that real serious, and you're going to check all your boxes, cover every detail, come in early like you're talking about. If you ever get to a point where that just feels routine, that's where you fall into those traps.
And I'll say something about that too. I was in business, a campground business, for a while. When we hired somebody the first year, they were awesome. They were
Johnny on the spot.
Yeah. The second year, they were. They know it. They know what to do now. Third year, they were worthless. You have to get rid of them in 3 years. I'm just saying that's just human nature,
right?
And we could even start to feel like it's a good thing sometimes. Like, I can do this in my sleep. I can do this in my sleep. And yeah, you might be able to do it in your sleep, but just because you can, you still need to put that intentionality, I guess, behind what you're doing, especially when, and I'm talking probably more about just your work and your day-to-day activities, but it definitely applies to your walk with God also. I
think again, let's not blur the lines if we don't have to. Is we tend to separate the secular from the sacred. Mm-hmm. No, it's all together. That's the other 167. Exactly right. And so I want to honor the Lord in my work. I want to honor the Lord in my whatever I'm doing, parenting, coaching, whatever I'm doing. I want to honor the Lord, and I think it goes back to. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing here is, okay, so what is your motivation? Well, if it's to please people, you're going to get tired real fast. If it's to please yourself, then you're going to, that's selfishness. I think it goes back to, and I believe Colossians 3:23, Colossians 3:24 talks about that whatsoever you eat or drink, whatsoever you do for the glory of God. And so if you have that higher purpose, which the biblical motivation, I like that terminology. If you have that higher motivation, that higher purpose, okay, now it takes on a different meaning than just the everyday routine. I think that's one of the things that keeps us pushing and driving. I think the other thing is, okay, so what are your priorities? Once you have your motivation, now what's your priorities? And what is it that we want to make sure that we tend to every day? Going back, I had a mentor who told me, and I fully believe this, he says, if you ever get in that pulpit and you ain't nervous, and that's his terminology, he was Southern just like me, and he said, if you ain't nervous, you don't feel like you're about to throw up, you need to quit. And he said, you're done. Because, man, there should be that anticipation of, man, we are dealing with lives, we're dealing with eternity, we're dealing with God's Word, and it should be and so I'm never comfortable on Sunday. I'm just ready to go. Yeah. Because it's almost like, all right, let's go ahead and get this on, because it is I don't ever want to get up there and just feel like, I can teach anytime. I never want to do that. Well, now, I will say preparation becomes easier because you know where to look. You know, okay, I know what that word is, and I know I don't have to do as much. A lot of the stuff I can remember, and so it helps as I'm putting together all these things.
Well, and I think I was actually just thinking about this on the way over here today, actually. That you even with like doing this show, like the first 2 or 3 times I did it was, we were real nervous. You're scared to death. And then
we're going to talk for how long?
Yeah, and then honestly, last week I got a little bit of a new kind of nervousness because we had a change, a welcome change, but it's like
what was going to come out of it.
Yeah. But it's that
I didn't either.
That awkward intro that I've been trying to figure out. It's like, well, now I got to insert another name in there. It's silly stuff. Yeah. But even as you start to get into the routine of things, now I understand how to record, how to edit, how to do some of these things a little bit better. The preparation, like you said, it's easier to do. But at the same time, I was kind of reminding myself on the way over here that, as much as I enjoy the conversations, it's not always just about what I want to talk about or what y'all want to talk about. There's other people that are listening. Sometimes I forget people are listening. You know what I mean? Just enjoying the talk.
I don't even think about the people listening, except for, I'm going to give a shout out to all my friends. And I think one of the things, too, is, and I just wrote an article about it, it's in the it'll be coming out in the flashpoints today. And it's one of the things I wrote about was, okay, one of the things I have to guard against is, all right, Easter's over. And there's a lot. I mean, you got the Easter extravaganza, you got the Easter egg hunt, you got Easter Sunday, and you got so many people here, and you got all. I mean, it's a big day. Then you get back to a regular Sunday, and okay, not as many people here. A lot of people are out of town. A lot of people this, that, and the other. And so, how do you keep that? I hate to say this, that Easter Sunday morning motivation, that Easter Sunday morning, I hate to say feeling because I just said it ain't about feelings all the time. But how do I keep that same excitement, or I called it in my article was, how do I keep that resurrection excitement? And I think it goes back to some of the things we talked about in the Lord's Supper. I think it starts with, you got to have a attitude of gratitude each day. You remember the sacrifice that he made for you. Remember what Easter is about, and then number three is stay close to the Lord. It's about abiding, and knowing that, hey, if he's given me resurrection power, then I want to walk in that. I just don't want to okay, it's Monday after Easter, now we're back to normal life. No, my life has changed.
And I think also we need to challenge ourselves too. When I learn something or when I get used to something, I pass it off to somebody else. And I think that's kind of goes with our commission, train disciples. When I feel like I'm good at something, I want to do something different. And I don't say that pridefully. When I feel like I know something, I want to train somebody else to go behind me. Right. And then they train somebody, then they train. And so that's how the church grows.
That's a great way to look at that.
When I'm hearing something in my mind that you said on a show, an active relationship with God and how it's evolving, it's new every day. It's always. I think a lot of the things that we're talking about, it just goes back again to that relationship. If you have an active and vibrant and if your relationship with the Lord is alive, then how he's gonna motivate you today might be different than what he uses tomorrow or yesterday. But you've got to have that. He's not going to run out of ways to motivate you if you're listening. You just got to be checked in with it.
And I think too is anytime again, we're talking about a marathon here. We're not talking about a sprint. And so a marathon, or rather than using a running analogy, let's just use a car analogy. 24 hours at Le Mans. Those guys are 24 hours at Daytona. They're going to race that car for 24 hours. Yeah, they come in, they change drivers, but what is it that car has to have, no matter what kind of car it is, Ferrari, Mercedes, Maserati, it's got to have gas. And if it ain't got gas, then the gas for us is the Holy Spirit. I mean, that is what is the wind beneath our sails. It is what pushes us. If you don't have gas, you're not going to go down the track. And so that's where what keeps pushing us and keeps us moving.
It's funny, Easter weekend, I was almost to the end of the New Testament. I really wanted to finish that. And I made a note, like, knock this thing, I really want to finish. And then I made a note in there, it's not legalism if you know you're doing it for yourself, right? Like, I knew God didn't care if I finished it or not, but I wanted to check it off my list.
Right, yeah.
And boy, I did all weekend. I read like crazy all weekend long. And when I finally finished Sunday afternoon after church on Easter, I remember thinking, phew. And those last 2 or 3 books, I had breezed through them so fast, I don't even know what it was I read, And I got done, and I felt God kind of say, well, are you proud of yourself now? Like, what did you accomplish exactly? Right. Nice job.
Did you see me in that?
Yeah, exactly. What did you learn about me in that?
I have to ask myself that all the time, because sometimes you read for reading's sake, and it's okay to read for reading's sake. It's God's word, but at the same time, no, I want to read for the author's sake. How can I see him, and how can I know him?
So I went back to Genesis this week, and I texted you that I had a question.
Oh,
that I was going to throw at you.
Curveball's coming, man.
Well, I don't know if it's a curveball. I think what I've learned to do is to take all my crazy, complicated thoughts and just let them go, and then later go back and organize them.
Right.
And usually there's a lot of repetitions, and I realize it really just comes back to this one point, I guess.
All right.
But I've been sorting through it, and also I've ran it by a couple people, and I can tell that I'm not completely right, so I'm just going to watch myself on what I say.
And Genesis 3, 4, and 5 is what you said in
Genesis 3:5 is where I would start. So Genesis 3:5 and really 3:8 is really where I'm at. Is that I'm getting to the most, I think, with it. So I never really paid attention that much to it's the tree of knowledge, eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The good and evil part I never really noticed, I guess. So I started thinking about it, and I guess I'm always asking why. Why this, why that. So I don't think God is one. He may in times just give you something just for obedience sake, but I think for the most part, if He gives you an instruction, there's a reason that He's told you to do that. So I started asking, well, what was the reason that He told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? And I thought, well, I guess that would mean that He didn't want them to have knowledge of good and evil. Well, why would He not want them to have knowledge of good and evil? Don't you want us to know right from wrong? And I thought, well, now that's where it can get a little complicated, so I'll skip forward to verse 8. I can tell you one that I have a lot of confidence in. Once they had that knowledge, they realized which side of it they fell on, and then they became ashamed.
They realized, we got to do something here.
And what did they do? They hid from God.
That's right.
I don't have to go to theology school to know that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But it's a bigger problem that I think I said in the description a couple of weeks back that on this show I've got you as like my gutter guards to kind of guide me along the way.
That. Sometimes we both end up.
Well,
all three.
Yeah, we just kind of help ping pong each other back into the middle somewhere. But the Holy Spirit kind of has that guiding force in your life to kind of subtly correct. You're going to make your mistakes. You're never going to stop making your mistakes.
That's right.
But it's when you make one of those mistakes and it makes you embarrassed and ashamed and you push Him away. Now you've just taken a little mistake, or maybe it was even a big mistake, and you've opened it up to now your life is the devil's playground. He can do whatever he wants to because you don't have your protective shield up or around you to kind of help guide you. So the thing that I've always read the Adam and Eve story as, God gave them one rule, they couldn't follow that one rule, and then He punished them and all of us for all these years because we're descendants of. And yeah, there's an element of that. I'm not trying to take away that part of the story. Yes, there is that. But I think a really big part that spoke to me in it is that the very first thing they did after acquiring this knowledge of good and evil was they hid from God. Yeah. That seems like that would be one of the top things on His list He wanted to avoid, and maybe that's why He did say don't eat from that, because a lot of times we like to say God's punishing us for disobeying. He tells us do this and we do the opposite, and then something bad happens and we think He's punishing us. Right. A lot of times He told you not to do that because He knew what was going to happen if you did it. So He was trying to keep you from the punishment.
Don't hurt yourself. First thing we taught, or one of the first shows we did.
So if thou shalt not hurt yourself was the very first. It was the first title. So in the context of Adam and Eve, you don't have to look very far to see why He would have told them not to eat the fruit when you see the very first thing they did was hide from God.
Yep. Well, I think it's one of, just like I said Sunday when we were talking about the Old Covenant, our hearts, because of our sin and because of Adam, and through Adam, through one man's sin has now entered into the whole race. Our hearts are not naturally inclined to, we want to tend to proceed or tend to run away from. That's why I love it. The first question asked in the Bible is, where are you? Genesis 3:9. And God knows where they are.
Right.
God didn't forget or somehow lose His children. He doesn't think they're hiding so good He can't find them. He's not playing hide and seek. No, His question was, where are you? In other words, you've left this relationship. I want you to know you've left this relationship. And they knew it. But He just wanted to know, hey, I know it too. And then you see the grace, if you will, of God Himself taking animals and providing covering for them. I mean, right there you have covering for sin. And so it's one of, you still see God pursuing us, even though our hearts are not naturally inclined to want to go towards Him. And that's part of what happened at the choosing to eat of the fruit.
What you pointed out right there, that seeing His grace right off the bat, and that they had been trying to cover themselves up, and one of the very first things He does is, okay, fine, if you're going to cover yourself, like, here, let me help you with that.
Yeah, you're going to cover yourself up with fig leaves.
But I guess the deeper thing that I started to wonder about that is that, okay, let me go this way with it. Yeah. Jesus talks about the innocence of children a lot. Jesus clearly loves children. We've talked a lot, and it's in church a lot, that we're born with that sinful nature, right? So those children that Jesus loves so much and talks so fondly of,
childlike faith, they'll believe you.
But they have the sinful nature. It's not that they're without sin.
Oh yeah.
They just aren't really aware of it yet because of their innocence. Were we sinful in Genesis 2, but we just hadn't actually acted on it yet, or did the eating the apple actually make us sin?
It was the eating of the fruit that actually made it. Was the choice that they made and then ate it.
Right.
She could have looked at it all she wanted to. Mm-hmm. She could have said, "Man, that thing looks nice. It looks like it would taste good." She could have even told Adam, "Look how good that thing looks on the tree," and walked away from it. We'd been in good shape. Mm-hmm. But I dare say, Give it another day or two, and we'd been right back at the tree saying, that looks so good. It makes me wise. It makes me, and so it was actually the choice and the eating that it was that propensity, and I won't say propensity to sin. We were human, but now we're fallen humans.
But was the fall inevitable? Like, were we going to fall at some point either way? I mean,
I think, God knows everything, what was going to happen, what wasn't going to happen, but he did not interfere with their freedom of choice. And, I know in a lot of times, and I've seen this a lot, the more people you have involved in, when you're praying for something, the more people that are involved, it's not always going to go the way you want it to go. Because you got so much free will and all these other things, and God's got to bring everyone together, and that can take a lifetime. That can take 10, 20, 30 years. I've just seen relationships that I've been, not me personally, been involved in, but I've seen people that have the relationship. The more people, it wasn't solved in one day. It was solved in many, many, many later years.
He knows you're not perfect.
Right.
He needs the relationship with you so he can work on your sanctification. And then I've got this triangle drawn here I wanted to ask you about. Like, we talk about the relationship, sanctification, and salvation. You have to have the relationship so he can work on your sanctification, and eventually in that comes the salvation. But he doesn't expect you to come already sanctified. And just because you slip and become a little unsanctified from something, don't compound the problem by pushing away the source of your sanctification and making it worse.
And I think that's what you say is true. And we don't have our theology. When we get saved, at least I did, when I got saved, I didn't know anything. I didn't have my theology worked out. The only thing that changed was my spirit. But it's taken me a lifetime to work towards God. Salvation is an incident that happens and you're secure, but your mind doesn't change for years and years. I mean, it does over time. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, I think. I'm going to answer that too. I think I'm going to go back to your question of. Did God know ahead of time? Sure. Was it inevitable? I think it was, because, you look at Revelation, and Jesus is revealed as the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. This was God's plan from He knows our heart, and He knew what we were going to do. So I think we still had free will in it, but I think inevitably, sooner or later, if Eve hadn't have done it, 6,000 years later, Ben Pierce would have shown up and would have ate it.
There you go.
But I tend to think Kenny Roy would have beat me to it then. But now going back to
I've been there 10 years.
The salvation, sanctification picture there. I think it's one of. I think it's also important to remember. Salvation is. I like to put it this way. I was saved in 1979 as a small boy. Came to know who Christ was. Death of an aunt helped me to see that we don't live forever. I'd heard the gospel. Well, I don't want to, basically it was, well, if God loved me, I want to respond to it. So I was saved. Today, I am being saved. Yeah. And then there will be a day when I'm in heaven, I will be fully saved. I think I've used that illustration of, if I'm drowning in the ocean, and Kenny comes by on a boat and pulls me into the boat. Okay, I'm saved, but I'm not fully saved until I get to the shore. So I'm saved when he pulls me in the boat. I am being saved as we travel towards that dock. And then once we get on that dock and I kiss the ground because I'm glad I didn't drown, now I'm fully saved. And so don't just, I think we sometimes fall into thinking of salvation as just a one-time thing. Sure, it's when we trust Christ, but I am being saved and will be saved. And during that process of am being saved is also the time of our growth in Christ. And I think that's where our sanctification comes in, of becoming more like Christ. And so I think there's a picture there, and I'm not sure. I know you drew a triangle. I'm not sure if it's a triangle or a spiral. I've always done it as a spiral. Okay, I entered into...
That's what I mean. It's just, I'm a terrible artist.
It's like a funnel. And what I'm seeing is, okay, there's that time for me, 1979, when I entered the relationship, and I'm spiraling upwards, kind of like a vending machine corkscrew that's going up. And I'm walking up, or moving up, hopefully growing as I spiral up towards that ultimate sanctification, that ultimate salvation.
And it's not a linear. They're
No,
bumps,
I think that's why it's the
Yeah,
spiral.
Yeah.
And it may be a spiral that oftentimes might have a twist down, or if we take the wrong choice. But it's not anything linear as much as it is. It's a journey. So and I think it's one of, don't beat yourself up if, oh man, today I did great, and then tomorrow it hits, and man, we fall on our face. That's okay. That's part of the walk.
I think that's the one I've struggled so much with, and we've talked about so many times on here, is that I get so mad at myself when I make. I thought about this. I'll try to make this quick point.
Yeah.
You talk. I hear you say a lot of times you need to keep a short sin list. And
Right.
I thought about this. If you actually could have me make a list of my sins today and take me back about 5 years and make a list, I would have a much longer list today than I did back then.
Yeah.
I just wasn't aware of them then. I wasn't paying attention to them.
And that's growing in Christ.
But it's really interesting as I'm starting to work through all of it and starting to understand this more and more and more. I don't see myself when I make mistakes and when I have my bad days or my bad moments or my whatever. I don't see myself so much as like the rebellious teenager that God just wants to choke because I'm just trying. I see myself more as like Steve Urkel that just can't get out of his own way, and like I'm always looking around like, did I do that? And he's saying, yeah, you did again. You know, like, but I love you. Quit. You know.
I think there's something in that, but you're exactly right. The more that you walk with the Lord, and I hate to use the analogy of digging a hole, but if you dig a hole and sooner or later you're going to get deep enough, it's going to start getting into some stony ground. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, we always think the big sin, whether it's cussing or something else, we think that's the hard sin, and the stony ground is when he begins to reveal little attitudes that we have, maybe just even the sin of omission, commission is, I don't really want to do that. You know, and it might not be anything other than, hey, I want you to call and encourage so-and-so today. I'm tired. I don't want to call nobody.
Yeah.
Well, if you know you're being led by the Lord to do that, those are little things that, again, that it starts getting harder. And, you begin to notice things such as, I shouldn't have lost my cool, or doggone it, I got upset over something that was so silly I shouldn't have gotten upset over.
Yeah, when I got saved, I'm not doing the top. I keep the top 10s, but as I've gone through my journey, the top 10, I'm all right with that. I'm fine. But the actual acts. But then as I got older, I'm starting to think, man, it's my thought process. I am breaking things that I'm not supposed to be breaking, and I finally gotten to the point. Not that I'm a saint by any means, but I finally gotten to the point. I used to hear older Christians. Mm-hmm. Renee's mother. Mm-hmm. She was saying, "Boy, I'm a bad person."
Yeah, I'm struggling.
And I think, you got to be kidding me. You don't do any of these things that I know about. But she had gotten so close to God, and God's so far off the charts. A sin, committing adultery, he's so far that telling a white lie is the same to him. Mm-hmm. And Paul mentions that you break one, you break it all.
Yeah.
And so I started realizing that it's more to these big sins. It's my whole mind is corrupted.
Yeah.
Mm. And as I've gotten closer, I want to say, as I've gone through my Christian life, I realized I'm not as good as I thought I was. Mm-hmm. And, you know what I'm saying?
You begin to understand what Jeremiah meant.
Yeah. That
my heart is deceptively wicked. And even though he's given me a new heart, I'm still fighting that flesh, and that flesh just keeps rearing its ugly head in so many different ways.
And I'm understanding what Paul said. I thought Paul was just kind of really backwards bragging. Things I want to do, I do. But that guy's written the most books in the New Testament. He might be just saying that.
More church, and we're here today because of Paul. Honestly.
But the closest, I realize now, the closer he was getting, he was really explaining his heart that, I am a bad person.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't call himself the chief of sinners.
Yeah.
Just as
I was just talking,
just trying to put himself down.
Put a show on.
It's legit. I mean, I don't think Paul ever let himself forget where he came from, too. We've talked about that, hey, here's the man that persecuted the church. Here's a man who participated in the first martyr with Stephen being stoned. He held the coats while they threw rocks at him. I mean, but I don't think he ever he let himself he forgot it, but he didn't forget it.
Mm-hmm.
He knew he'd been forgiven, but he also knew, look what God saved me from. We've talked about that in a way. I mean, Matthew refers to himself as the tax collector. Nobody else calls him the tax collector when you list out the disciples, but Matthew called himself, I was a dirty, rotten thief. I was a tax collector. Why? Because I want folks to know what Christ saved me from.
And then Paul says there's no righteous one.
None righteous. Not one. Yeah. But I think it is one. I mean, I've met many elderly saint, folks that I think, man, these guys, they walk on water almost. They're that. And I realize, no, they'll tell you, man, no, I struggle just like everybody else, if not more. And again, that's not to frustrate us as those that are still on that journey. It's just to say, hey, it's a never-ending process.
Well, I remember when we first, the first 1 or 2 or 3 shows here, and you talk about how much you struggle with pride, and I'm thinking, Ben can't struggle with pride.
No,
you don't
yes,
seem
you
like you've got any pride. And then as I started to get into it a little bit, I was like, oh wait, I could see how that becomes harder. Yeah.
Easily, especially pastors you have to guard against that. Man, something fierce.
Oh, I bet.
Because
Yeah.
people think, oh man, and they're like, no. If you got anything out of it, it was the Lord.
Yeah.
I've noticed you on that. I think, and of course I'm bragging about you a little bit, so don't get prideful.
No, I won't. I'll try not to.
But he, to me, he's been one of the most humble pastors that I've ever met.
Well, if you remind yourself,
Yeah.
hey, look, man, it is only by God's call and God's grace that you're in it, that He did that. So there's nothing to be prideful about.
And God says He has no pet peeves. In Romans, He says, you're all the same. We don't have anything to be prideful for, really.
No, that's the beauty of the cross. It humbles you because all of us come, no matter who you are, the same way.
Well, that scripture is God has no respect of persons.
That's it. I didn't know what a pet peeve was.
That's what I mean by that. Yeah. Well, I've never been a teacher's pet peeve, so I don't know.
There's a song that I listened to I think I heard it the first time 3 or 4 weeks ago, but it's called Heart of Stone. And it's weird. I think it's actually, if I just read the lyrics without the, it's a slow song, and it's kind of like a dark sounding song. I think if he would just get rid of the minor chords and pick up the pace a little bit, it would be an uplifting song to me.
You sound like a musician. You don't even know what
I play a little
chord
guitar.
is.
I play a little guitar.
Yeah.
Not a lot, not very
Pick
good.
it up.
So as I'm listening to the song, though, it's someone who is growing and basically looking back at all their sinful past, and there's a lot of regret there. But at the same time, he's talking about how much he's growing and improving, and he's getting better at it, and it's a little bit symbolic of my life, I gotta admit. But he still says, I carry on with a heart of stone. And it's like, well, if you've made all this progress, then why do you still have a heart of stone? That song has meant so much to me lately.
Right.
Because even as I grow in the Lord, I'm becoming more and more and more aware of that heart of stone that will never go away. Right. And it's that picking up your cross daily thing that we've talked about before too, I have that heart of stone in my back pocket waiting every single day. Jesus is the only thing that softens it up. And any day that I forget, or any hour that I forget to turn to Him, that heart of stone is still right there. You never defeat it. It's that, and that can be any. Now, I've naturally am a cold-hearted person, I think, too, so it fits better. But whatever your nature is, we are all, as you said, deceptively wicked, and there's the closer you grow to God, it becomes more obvious to you in a way. But even though it's humbling, it doesn't make you feel worse and worse and worse about yourself, because it makes you appreciate His grace that much more. And the bigger that gap becomes, the bigger you can see God is.
Right.
That's where He shows Himself.
Right. And remember, we've said this before, humility is not thinking less of yourself. I'm a sorry person. No, it's just thinking of self less, meaning I don't have to be the center of attention. I don't have to be the one you're rude over or have to brood over. And I think also that humility goes back to where do you get your self-worth from? Well, so many people get their self-worth based on how many zeros are in their bank account, how many people work for them, how many cars they have, what's their, they base their self-worth based on stuff or accomplishments, where our worth comes from what Christ did for us and who Christ is in us. And so when we recognize that changes so much. It changes how we function when we know that. Is okay, my worth comes from Christ, not from who I am. did I preach a good sermon this Sunday? Is my Sunday school class growing? No, it's based on who Christ is and are we making much of Him? Yeah. And that goes back to that motivation. Kind of brings it full circle what we talked about.
Yeah. From Bible study this week, in David Jeremiah study, there was a cool quote he had there, we become uncomfortable with what grieves Jesus. And I kind of made a notice that, interestingly, our very nature grieves Jesus. That sinful nature, the way we are. I mean, we can't escape that. But it's like you said, I mean, these people who've been, the older Christians who've been walking for years and years, and they think they're these terrible, evil people. You don't see... The big sins are the ones that people can see, but you can't see what's in somebody's heart. Right. Like,
when it's just you and God.
Right. Yep. When it's just you and God.
I know. By the way, Thursday morning, y'all got a special guest speaker.
Yeah, I heard he's coming in from Duncan, isn't he?
Heard?
Yeah. Isn't he coming from Duncan? All the way from Duncan?
The Duncan Delight is coming in.
Yeah. That's a long trip.
I got tickled. I was asking Leo. Leo usually does a lot of y'all's, especially when it comes to prophecies and stuff, and I told him, I said, so now what do you normally do? I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, well, I didn't want that lesson. It's too simple. And I was like, oh, I guess that's the one they give me.
They give you the layup.
No, I tell you what, though, I thought about it and I was like, that's the one I want, is the one that we can, here's your invitation. Christ says, come to me. And we're going to go from Isaiah 55 more than we are from Revelation, because, John quotes that, but we're going to have a good time. I don't know. It may be the most simplistic lesson y'all ever heard.
Is it this
Let's
Thursday?
Not make it complicated.
Is it this Thursday?
It's this Thursday.
Okay.
You're going to miss it.
You might not get a seat.
Make sure you get a seat. Yeah, he'll be.
We got to get here early.
I'm going to have to skip that.
I'm going to have to tell Renee, you got to get ready fast.
Yeah. But,
I'm going to have to drive separate.
But I think it is one. I do want to just say this. Talking about Thursday morning, we're going to be talking about the invitation. And I think one of the things is, that to me is the most beautiful thing in the Bible, is that this God that we sinned against, this God that we broke his heart, this God that we talked about, that our natures are totally opposite. I mean, even in that passage in Isaiah, his ways are not our ways. That has to do with forgiveness. Mm-hmm. That passage is dealing with his ways are not, because we tend to forgive, but oh boy, don't you ever do me wrong again, because if you do, it's going to be on. No, God forgives, and through the blood of Christ, it's wiped away. Yeah. He doesn't hold it against us anymore. Man, what can be better than that?
Again, as we talk about all this, I really don't want it to make it sound like God just makes us feel terrible about ourselves all the time. It's not that. You get to see his love and his grace in that. And I challenged myself on this the other day. I was praying about something in advance, and I was saying, and I basically, I think I said, when I pray that you not let me do this or not do that, and I said, even though I probably will, and he said, yeah, you will, and I thought, but you've already forgiven me for what I'm going to do, and I thought, is that true? No, I guess he did. He forgave you for your sins before you committed them, so that one you're going to make tomorrow.
Past, present, future, you're forgiven. You're not going to lose your salvation.
Right, and you don't have to question that. Well, is he going to forgive me for the one I haven't committed yet? Because yes, all of this was put into place before you were even the first cell of your body had.
The bill's been paid.
Right. I love the way you said that the other day about the explaining.
I went home and we watched that. I said, man, I missed that. I could have done that better. And I should have said,
well, here you go. Here's your mulligan.
My bill wasn't paid. My bill was covered.
Covered, right.
Because that's what the Old Testament did. Is it provided covering. Okay. I walked out of the restaurant, and the illustration was I took Renee out to eat, used my MasterCard, and my question was, have I paid the bill? And technically I have not. It's been covered. They didn't make me wash dishes. They didn't say, Mr. Pierce, sorry, you're going to have to, come back here and cook for us. They let me go. But now next month, that bill's going to come due, and I haven't paid it till I sit down and I write a check. And I write it for that amount, and okay, now it's paid till money leaves my pocket, so to speak. Well, it was covered, but then the bill came due for our sin at the cross. All those Old Testament sacrifices, that was a covering. The bill came due at the cross, and Jesus took the ink pen out in his own blood, and he signed the check, and it's paid in full, once and for all, forever.
And one of the questions, so you brought up the law. So I had this from Sunday. I understand that without the law,
we still had sin.
Right. Is it that we probably wouldn't have coveted until God told us not to covet, and now we covet all the time because it's become the forbidden fruit? Or is it what gives us the boundaries of knowing what good and evil, knowing where those
I think
lines
it's a
are?
little bit of both. I think it's one of, okay, now I know it's a sin, and I know I'm not supposed to, but John Brown, I sure do enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
I didn't want to
we-
until you told me
yeah,
not to.
Yeah, I do, yeah. Kind of like, I used the illustration of, hey, there was a hotel over the water. They said, they put a sign up, don't fish.
That was so
They
funny.
start fishing. You didn't have a sign up, nobody fished. Nobody thought about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a picture of, and that's really what the law is there for. It's not to heal us, it's to show us you're sick. And how it shows us you're sick is, look at God's standard and how much I want to go against that.
Yeah. Well, because the illustration with the hotel is I loved, you said, do you want to know how they fixed it? And I think we all kind of knew they took the sign down.
Take the sign down. Yeah.
But I kind of thought about that. Well, if you, is it because I think a lot of times we think the law is what gives us our out of bounds line. If you didn't give us an out of bounds line, we couldn't cross it, right? So you put us in a box, and now we're going to say, but it's not just that. There is a little bit of it. It's like, well, now you're telling us what not to do. That's all I want to do now, right? Whether but then it does go back to it's your heart that makes you want to do that.
But the out of bounds line is one that we tend to want to either move it out, bring it in. And what I mean by that is this week's lesson or sermon is Luke 10, and a lawyer comes and asks Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says, well, what's written in the law? And he says, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, go and do it and live. Now, he's quoting the Old Testament. All right. The problem is then the lawyer wants to justify himself, he wants to justify himself, and he throws in, well, who's my neighbor? He doesn't even argue with the, why don't you argue with the loving God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul? He says, well, who's my neighbor? Hey, Jesus knows you're not going to do this perfectly, but I'm going to tell you what the law says, Mr. Lawyer.
Yeah.
But I know you're never going to do this right and do it perfectly. Then he begins to tell the story of who our neighbor is, and you begin to realize, well, loving God and loving people go together, but also, man, loving your neighbor, that takes a supernatural empowerment because, we tend to think about, it's easy to love my family. They're like me. But those that aren't.
Was it you in church on Sunday or maybe Thursday morning or that I heard you love your neighbor? You probably don't even know your neighbor's name. Was that church or was that something? I saw a...
whoever said it, that's great.
So, I don't know if this is where it was or not, but there was... I crack up at just watching... there's a YouTuber that I'm a pretty big fan. I enjoy watching this guy's stuff. He's kind of like the 167 in a way, in that he's pretty real about stuff. Right. The one thing is he will call out people in a heartbeat. Right. But one thing he was putting out was a bunch of people prophesizing that yesterday was going to be the end.
It didn't happen.
Right. And he put out a video that basically said, okay, let's read what Jesus said. Jesus said, no one knows the hour, not even the Son. So if you are sitting here saying that you figured it out, then you've clearly not read God's Word.
Well, you're smarter than Jesus.
Right. But even if you have, what did it say that he wanted to not find you doing when he came back? And that was basically, and it was kind of funny the way he said it, like, you shouldn't be sitting around watching YouTube videos about whether the end of time, even though I'm the one putting out the YouTube videos. You should be out helping people. So it was a really cool, but he was talking about when he comes back, he expects to see you taking care of your neighbor and doing all these things. You don't even know your neighbor. You probably know your neighbor's name. Or you love him.
And the beauty of it is he's right. At the same time, you don't even have to know your neighbor's name. Right. In fact, I think that's the thing that Jesus gets at in this Luke 10 is, now this is a Jew, supposedly. It never says it's a Jew, but you can just assume it. And here's a Samaritan. That ain't supposed to happen. Yeah, that's 10 times worse than Duke and Carolina. The hatred they have for each other. This is the worst. Take black and white, take Jew and Arab, multiply it by 2, and that's about what you got with Jew and Samaritan.
Yeah.
When you said about knowing your neighbor's name, there's a lot of people that don't know their neighbor's names.
Yeah,
I didn't realize
right.
that. And I'm not criticizing, but that's just, sometimes we just get caught up in our own selves and,
Well, we think I know enough people at church.
Yeah.
But it's a good point of, hey, if we're to love God with all our heart, mind, body, and soul, it's hard to measure that, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you measure devotion? How do you measure do you love God? Well, here's how you measure it. John tells you, if you don't love people, you don't love God. One of the things we need to examine is how loving are we to even folks that we taken the time to even get to know folks, and do we show strangers love?
And I have to say, I've been that way before.
Oh yeah, we all have.
But one that's been maybe challenging me a little bit too is that loving everybody, very easy to understand that one. At the same time, there are some people that you're going to come across, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular, so if anybody hears this, I'm not talking about you or anybody you're thinking of. But there are going to be some people that you come across that
they don't want to be friendly.
They don't want to be friendly, or it could be a situation where you know when you're around that person, you're not going to be your best self, or or it could be somebody that
they don't want your friendship.
They want to dig out and poke at the sore spots, or what. There's 100 different combinations of things you can think of there. So I'm looking at Jesus, and he did not spend a tremendous amount of time on people that he didn't waste his time with people that were cold-hearted and pushing him away, and he was very forgiving to those who were seeking him, but he didn't waste his time barking up the wrong tree either. If you were at odds with him, he wasn't going to sit there and argue with you all day long about it necessarily. So, but he still loved everybody. So how do you handle the person? How are we called to handle the person that we have to show love to?
Right.
But in my opinion, it feels like the best thing I can do to show my love is to just stay away from them. Honestly, right. Is that?
I think that's a tough situation. I think that's a hard one to really get at. You want to take a stab, or
Well, I'll just tell you what my mother told me: be nice, be nice. Be nice.
I think
that's what my mother always said. Just be nice.
I would yield to Paul, if at all possible, live peaceably with all men.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be some folks, they don't want to be peaceably with you, and that's fine. I'm going to I'm not going to treat you mean. I'm not going to just be nice and move on.
Yeah, I just said the short word. He took the scenic route. The tour. He took you on the scenic tour.
Yeah, I like that.
Just be nice. It's knowing when to mind your own business and when to call people out for their mess. You know what I mean?
I think it's that, and then I think it's also how you call people out.
Yes, absolutely.
Responding to a crazy Facebook post, probably not the best bet.
There's just a whole bunch of stuff in the world I don't agree with right now. You know what I mean? Like you see it all around. There's all this stuff, and I was talking to the kids the other day about stuff at school and what they teach at school. Some of the stuff they teach at school don't even make any sense. You know what I mean? Like it just. So there's a part of me that wants to just avoid that. Right. Like avoid people like that, avoid that, because you're never going to change their mind on stuff, and it could be Facebook, it could be schools, it could be the person down the street, it could be your cousin, it could be anybody. But part of me just feels like mind your business and stay. But on the other hand, Jesus didn't stand by and just watch people.
There are times you got to stand for the truth.
Right.
And I think it all goes back to, okay, are we talking about a bunch of youngins' minds getting messed up by a lie? All right, then we need to stand for the truth. I mean, there are times when, all right, this one is one. Now and I think it just becomes a choose your battles, but also, is this a hill worth dying on? Yeah, it is. All right, then let's stand. Yeah. And if not, and again, I think that's where wisdom comes in. We talked about walking with the Lord for a long time. You learn various things. I think wisdom is one of those things you pick up too. That okay, this is a major hill. This is one we need to defend. And I might need to stand up. And people going to look at me funny, probably. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
So we won't make it 2 shows?
Well, I just realized I didn't realize we'd gone that long. So I guess we better go.
We like I said, we can make it keep on going. We'll just make it a 2-parter.
I mean, we've done that before. It's like I said, I've seen some podcasts and stuff out there. It's 2 or 3 hours long. Yeah, so I mean, we can just keep going. They'll quit listening if they're bored, I'm sure. But well, guys, I appreciate y'all taking the time. And Kenny, man, I've enjoyed having you join us with these things. We appreciate your insights.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun, Kenny.
And it keeps. I like how you'll call back. You'll fight back at Ben a little bit and call him out.
Yeah, that's what I enjoy. I enjoy that.
I'm a little afraid to pick on Ben too much.
Hey, do it. I love it.
Well, I do want to say that this podcast was listened into. It spread out to 5 counties.
There you are, man.
It went from Wake to Harnett County.
All right.
It was in Johnson County.
There you go.
Sampson County, Duplin County, Pender County, New Hanover.
Sounds like your travel
No, that's my wife. She was listening.
the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, I saw her.
A couple times. Yeah. So it did. We did expand the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just gonna throw my
We got
analytics
one.
all off.
Did
My
she
analytics
like
don't know.
it? Did she like it? Did your wife like it?
Yeah. Yeah. She says she did. But she says a few other things too.
Well, thank you guys.
I love it.